Welcome to the Qualitalks Podcast, a show about pharma and GMP. The pharmaceutical industry is a fascinating and complex field, and it takes countless people to bring a product to the market. In this podcast, we bring you some of the industry's brightest minds who will share their wisdom with you. And now, please welcome your host, Jan Kugel.
Welcome to our podcast episode focusing on the pivotal role of patents in the realm of life sciences. Today we have the honor of hosting Ben Coverdale, PhD, a seasoned global account director at Patsnap with a strong background in the life sciences in innovation intelligence sectors. Ben brings a wealth of experience and insights into how patents influence drug development, the challenges companies face in securing patents, and the transformative impact of AI solutions in revolutionizing patent research and analysis. So, Ben, welcome. It's a pleasure having you on this show. How are you doing?
Very well. Thank you for having me, Jan. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So, patents are really fascinating, although many people might not realize it how important they are for the industry. And we will dive into the discussion about it and how the AI tools today develop this seed and how they influence the research and manufacturing and so on. And before we dive into this discussion, can you give some overview of what you're doing as an account director? What does it mean, and how is it all connected to what we're going to talk today?
Sure. So, a bit about my background before I start charging into what Patsnap does. So, I'm a scientist by trade. I started off doing a PhD in biomedical materials at the University of Manchester. And that was sort of my introduction into how you can start using patents as an additional data source to the scientific literature that we're very used to in the research field in academia. We were starting to make three-dimensional scaffolds for stem cell engineering purposes. And as well as looking at the scientific articles that were there, it's the patents that were really exciting, because a lot of the source of innovation that you find is published in patents. If anyone's serious about taking their innovation forwards, you'll find it there. So that's when I first got introduced to patents, and that is where I made the jump into Patsnap and started working as an account director for this company. So yeah, I've been at Patsnap for around 4 years now. And I've got the privilege of working with many of the largest and the most innovative pharmaceutical and biotech companies in the world. And we help them to improve their drug development processes. We help them with their discovery of new assets. I've got the benefit of working with our own product team as well. So we get a lot of feedback and requests from how we can exploit like new technologies, or if something revolutionary comes into the field, we need to develop the tools to allow researchers and IP professionals to search those. So yeah, I work with our product team as well to bring these tools to life and help innovation along the way.
Thank you for this great overview. So now that we dive into the patents world, can you provide some overview on how the patents influence the development and the innovation of new drugs and how it drives the industry as a whole?
Sure. Yeah. So what I mentioned during the academia that you do, when you're looking at scientific articles, the other side is patents, and that is essentially your right to manufacture and sell whatever you've made, whatever your invention is. So within the pharmaceutical industry, it's such an intensive place. The innovation is so strong now. There's so many different facets of the industry which are being developed right now, and you have to be really defined in how you're putting your technologies together. So it's a very crowded space, but there's also a lot of room for innovation in there, because there's just so much scope to go at. So yeah, it's really driving the innovation in this sector. You see it through even the last few years, like through the pandemic and the advent of the mRNA vaccines. You'll see before the pandemic, we didn't see much of mRNA research, but now we're seeing there's around 3 or 4 times more patents and publications after the pandemic now, and it's led us to develop new and more effective therapeutics for various diseases and ailments. And it's the same across the entire landscape as well. Lots of different therapies in there, including things like antibodies or CAR T therapeutics, things for targeting cancer specifically. So whilst it is a very intensive space and there's a lot of competition, there's a huge amount of innovation potential within this sector. So yeah, patents drive innovation.
Right. So there are probably a lot of challenges there, right? So there are millions of patents on different areas, right, in the world, and when you do innovation, you need to make sure that even part of your innovation doesn't tick a box somewhere of some patent that somebody has filed, right, in your country, or if there are some collaboration between the countries, right? So what are the biggest challenges that industries face when they need to understand whether what they're developing already has been done, or it's new, or are they allowed to do it? So how does it work, and what are the issues there?
That's a very, very good question, and one that is probably the key question in our industry, because you've got a new drug. How on earth do you establish whether someone else has used it in the past, or whether you've got what we call freedom to operate in terms of being able to commercialize what you've developed? So the wealth of data out there is huge, and it is a massive challenge. There are a huge amount of litigation proceedings and all sorts of infringement issues because of this crowded space. But that's why Patsnap comes in. So Patsnap is a very, very comprehensive database. It has a lot, not just the largest patent database in the world, but we're extracting things like sequence information, structure information. We're getting all sorts of drug pipeline data in there as well. And because we're using AI to connect all these different data points together, we can help to reveal those key insights to help you to plot better R&D strategies. You can understand who's patenting in a particular space. You can use the tools to understand whether you do have freedom to operate, or if you are infringing, if you do need to change something very slightly. And it's a much more effective way of cutting through all of that data, identifying those key technologies that you should be looking at pursuing, rather than the older approach, which was, let's just take a therapy and see how far we can go with it. Because I'm sure you can imagine the costs of developing those therapeutics, taking them into clinic, and then suddenly realizing that actually this has been done before. It's a huge cost. So we streamline a whole lot of that. That's one of the main challenges that we have. Another one is the whole R&D process is very uncertain now. So many projects fail. We get to a point where how are you selecting the drugs with the most potential before you see a return on this? So you want to try and make sure that you're patenting at the right time. You don't want to just go and patent everything, because it's very costly process to build a patent portfolio. But you also don't want to do it too late as well, because someone else might take your idea. So understanding how trends are evolving and how different competitors are moving into the space, how different technologies are being developed, it's all feeding into the same sort of the same pot, where we're collecting all this information together to make sure we're making informed decisions. And again, that's how Patsnap work with R&D and IP teams to help assess what's going on here. So that's how we overcome some of the challenges there.
Right. So was it like a manual process until the databases came in and the AI and the helpful? So basically, people, when they started to research, they needed to do a very manual search and to understand whether their molecule was already patented. So how has it been? Was it done so far?
It's sort of the same old story, which we have iterated on for 20 years since our inception. So it's like our CEO originally started. He got very frustrated being able to trying to search for patents and inventions in articles all across the world. He just couldn't find anything that was all linked together. So he thought, right, well, I need to put everything together in one place, and that's where Patsnap happen. That was the genesis of the whole tool, was trying to collect everything together, make it very easy for people to search for patterns.
Right.
But since then, we've been doing this for 20 years now, and the last 10 of which we've been developing in the life science industry and leading the field in AI development. We've been using the database that we have for patents to link it with other data sources as well, pulling in the most comprehensive patent sequence database in the world. We've got the most comprehensive structure database as well. And by linking all of these tools, developing algorithms to extract key findings, as I mentioned, innovation is packing these patents full of great data sources, and we can extract all of these to help R&D teams, but also IP teams to formulate that strategy. So it's that initial question that Jeff had. I want to try and find this data, but now we're using it with more complex like sequence information. We're looking at like chemical modified RNA oligonucleotide therapeutics. It's the same question, just applied to a more complex and we've gone far beyond the initial question, but it's just being applied in a different context.
Yeah, so it takes time. Those are steps, right? So it's great. I think the best businesses start with the individual need, right? So a person understands, I'm lacking something, and the best solutions come out from such necessities. So that's a really great story about the history of the company. And so you mentioned that right now you can identify not only specifically, it really goes into the molecules and everything. So it's very fascinating. And just to understand also the differences between research and academia to establish commercialized drugs. So is there a difference in the need in such databases for the different types of companies, let's say CROs or different startups, academia, and the big commercial companies that sell commercialized drugs? So where does it all come together?
Yeah, so the first point, what we touched on before, developing your own technologies, that's hard in itself. You've got to try and understand if someone has done that before. But then in terms of the commercial aspects, so a patent usually grants you access to or rights to that, whatever you've patented, for around 20 years. This enables you to sell that drug. And then after that expires, there are various things that you can add to this. You can get regulatory and exclusivity extensions on this, but understanding how you can try and keep hold of this exclusivity around the drug, that can also be quite a challenging thing. So there are a lot of the big companies out there who are trying to continue their portfolios, make sure that the drugs stay with them as long as possible, because they obviously want to monetize it as much as possible. But equally, there are smaller companies there who are looking to identify, what we call generics or biosimilars. When these patents go off patent, when they become available to manufacture in their own companies, bring them into their own portfolio. And there are tools that we can use in Patsnap that can accommodate for that as well. So we've got a lot of data around the expiry dates and things like the exclusivity data there as well. And we can help teams to basically form strategies around how you can develop from a commercial standpoint as well, not just a brand new research and innovation perspective.
Right. So what are like the stages, right, of the patent applications where so much data is needed, and AI helps to bring everything in the right order? So what are the challenges there when you need to apply for the patent and you need to collect probably a lot of information, and you need more technological tools? So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think traditionally patents or patent analysis was seen as a trade where you needed a legal qualification. You needed to be trained up in the field to understand how patents were written, and that is largely the same now, because you do need to write these patents and to understand to get them granted. you do need those qualifications. But it's sort of separated the R&D teams, the innovation teams, the business development people in companies. They sort of had to rely on these IP professionals with a specific knowledge. Whereas now what IP is enabling, what AI is enabling us to do is to really dig into how IP can be used to their advantage, so that we can make it much more easy to understand using AI to interpret what the patent means. So Patsnap has its own LLM, which has basically been trained on our own database. So it's trained on patent data, obviously. It's trained on all of our life science information as well. And it's getting to the point where we can summarize key data sets. We can understand the claims of a patent in a very clear, concise format. We can actually see like how the patent is going to be developed, and even look at spaces for where the innovation could be directed in the future. We can even start to give suggestions on that. And in the future, we're even looking at doing things like patent drafting and using the tool to support the whole like development process, from the very early discovery all the way through to the commercialization. Our LLM is going to be there to support that process. So yeah, where it used to be quite a siloed area, which was just for IP professionals only, we're now opening this data set up to allow R&D professionals and innovation teams to really leverage the data that we find in patents, use it to their advantage, and make it super clear as to what's being claimed in them.
Right. So you allow people who don't have a lot of legal knowledge to understand better and read into what's going on the surface, right? And
Yeah, so I mean, a key thing that's changing nowadays is a lot of these, like I say, a lot of these people have the expertise in focusing on IP. But if your whole company, if you're a large company, if your whole company is relying on a particular department, often you get these requests that often lead to large backlogs. And if the researchers could do those questions themselves, it would save a huge amount of time in terms of defining a strategy. Now that's a large company. If you're a small company as well, it's equally important. If you've got 10 employees and a new biotech, and you've got one guy who's supposed to be focusing on patents, but probably if you've got 10 employees in the company, you're going to be doing so much more than just focusing on IP. You're going to be looking at all sorts of other things as well as part of your day-to-day role. So if you have tools that enable you to very quickly assess the IP landscape, you can dig into the key factors that are found in those patents. It just makes your whole organization a much more efficient place to be. And if you're saving time, you can do other things that aren't sapping, like traditionally looking through patents and trying to find it. So that's where Patsnap grants you a whole load more time that you can do so much more with. Whether you're a startup, having those conversations to get noticed by other companies, or going into the lab and developing those new therapeutics, or if you're a large company, strategizing properly and making sure that you're prioritizing the key assets in your pipeline. Time is very important, and that's what Patsnap provide.
yeah, can you give examples of scenarios where it, it companies did something wrong when applying for patents, or they missed something and everything just went downhill because of some issues that they had while assessing patents and doing it incorrectly and manually and so on? So what are the dangers here?
I'll save people's blushes from actually putting the naming and shaming people, but there's so many incidents you'll see of like high level litigation proceedings, or legal battles between companies because something hasn't been properly assessed. They haven't done their due diligence on a specific therapeutic or something. So, mentioning no names, there was a couple of years ago during the COVID pandemic, two of the key players in there, they are engaged in it, or were engaged in a very intensive legal battle. And if that had been outlined properly, and they'd had the correct tools to be able to understand what the infringements were, what they could do about it early on, then we wouldn't be in that situation. So yeah, that in itself, the legal implications of this it's very good to work this out beforehand, because you could use it as an advantage. Like if you find that you're infringing on someone and you recognize it early enough, you could even form things like partnerships or collaboration opportunities. You could license in their portfolio to yours to strengthen your portfolio. You can use it to your advantage. It doesn't have to be just, oh, we're going to go to the league, to the lawyers now, and it's going to be a messy situation. You could certainly leverage it and make it a more fruitful relationship for both parties. So yeah, another reason that we can, or another way that we can support there.
Right. Yeah. So the due diligence is important. So I guess there are a lot of cases where companies were not aware even that they were infringing, and after it can be maybe after 5, even 10 years that the company that filed some patent or part of the patent, then they have claim for the revenues, right? So there are such occasions and dangers, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So, and it's an incredibly costly process, and it goes on for a long, long time. And again, as I keep coming back to, that the time spent on these things, which is, you don't want to be spending your time in a litigation battle. You want to be spending your time developing therapeutics, finding the next thing, developing the new invention. So yeah, all of these things contribute to having a more successful business, which allows to innovation to thrive.
Right. So how do you see AI influencing the patent landscape in a way that it would not only make it the life easier to research, but actually drive innovation? So does it make sense that it would do it, and in what way?
So the patent side of things and doing the classic FTO search, as we call the freedom to operate search, that's just one thing that we specialize in. The other thing I mentioned, there's so many different data types that are hidden within patents. You've got so much information in there, from like the biological information in there, there's structural data, there's processes, there's experimental information in there as well. And one of the things that Patsnap is very good at is creating like ontologies of this data, collecting it all together, categorizing it, and making it readable for the user. So one example of this is we've curated a data set of 100,000 antibody antigen pairs, which can be used to train in silico models. This data is very good in itself, but we actually are able to extract further information from patents as well. So not just the pairings themselves, but we can get things like epitope data, affinity data as well. And we're collecting all of this together to make it usable for these teams who are developing like in silico models, so AI, using their own AIs to establish these new therapeutics. So that's just one example. There's loads of different ways we can extract key data types and make it usable for development and innovation beyond just the classic freedom to operate and strategy.
Right. So patents are usually valid for 20 years, right? In total. And can the AI predict or give you some hints which expired patents you can use to leverage them to create new solution? Is it something imaginable that even if it's not happening today, that the machine learning can be trained to do something like this, to search different patents and suggest ideas for further research?
There's no reason why not. And actually, as part of the tool that we have right now, it's called Hero. So it actually works. It's part of our LLM. It's our AI tool. But one of the things that you can do with it is, as I mentioned earlier, you can summarize patent data. We use that by going through what we call patent DNA to assess what the patent was filed for, what are the key findings in there, and then what the technical outcome of that was, what the problem it was designed to solve. And as part of that, we can use it in the context of the whole innovation landscape to understand what's been addressed in that patent, but what also could be developed that hasn't been touched on in the patent. So things that could be improved on, that you could file a new patent in the future on. And that's that's something that we've released towards the end of last year, and that's something that we're developing all the way through this year as well, as part of our enhancing the capabilities of the LLM. And I mentioned there's a few things in there as well, like looking towards actual patent drafting, and there's things like being able to like summarize the entire data set. We're actually bringing out our own LLM trained on all the life science data that you can ask specific questions. You can get it to extract and summarize key information from like trial data and drug pipeline information. And then even beyond that as well, we're actually looking at being able to use our LLM on client data as well. So not just Patsnap itself, we're not just saying, here's the data that we've got. We're saying to our clients, how do you want to use the data? Use our interface to interpret and extract those key data points that are relevant to you. So yeah, lots of things that we can do here to accelerate that process.
Right. So you mentioned that it would save countless of hours, right, for companies, big, small, right? So do you think this will support more advancement because you save time on things that probably take weeks, months, maybe years to research, right? So if you can do it quickly, you can put more effort in the research, and then also companies that probably started working on something that was already patented, then they can understand, okay, they can just move to the right or to switch projects, right? So there are so many things that are pivoted around patents that if you do it correctly, you save time, you can make way for innovations. But is there any other things that you can think that we didn't mention that can support the innovation?
I mean, there's a few new tools which I'm really excited about at the moment. Part of our biosequence tool. So I mentioned I'm a scientist, and the biology side really fascinates me. But yeah, I mentioned saving time with processes that existed before. So you could read through patents and try and understand the key data sets within them. There are other things as well that are just not possible to do so at the moment. And Patsnap have come along with a couple of new tools. One is our chemical modification search, which is for oligonucleotide RNA therapeutics. You can actually search for chemically modified patterns within those RNA strands to understand who has been modifying those particular bases for whatever reason, stabilization or functional benefit. We've also got a degenerate searching tool as well, which allows you to search for degenerate sequences. Now, if you don't know what a degenerate sequence is, it's essentially a sequence which can be claimed as any base, which is very helpful. But it means that you can apply a lot of protection on those sequences, and it's very, very hard to go and firstly find them, but also try and understand what they're actually claiming. But Patsnap have developed with AI sophisticated algorithms that can break down these difficult to find sequences, and it just makes it so much easier for you. These situations where you just wouldn't be able to search these previously are a new avenue to explore. So we can't even compare the time saved before, because it's an entirely new process which we're enabling people to do. And that sort of thing is really exciting, because it's opening up a whole new era of innovation for us and companies working in the biologic space. So yeah, that's really cool. I really like that.
Yeah. So, are there such things as patent graveyards where you would say, okay, there are patents where were filed, but nobody, maybe companies went bankrupt or they didn't pursue some technological advancements. So, do you think companies could go to such databases and just try to understand the patterns that were not followed upon and just pick it up and just continue the innovation from there? Do you see like companies really doing something like this? Does it make sense?
You definitely can do. Yeah, it's quite a big use case to be able to do that, to try and pick up technologies that went to a certain stage and then just for whatever reason weren't carried through. And there's a few other uses as well. You mentioned graveyards, but there's also like examples of larger companies making these patent thickets, they call them. So it's like just patenting across one drug will have multiple patents attached to it, just to confuse the landscape. So they don't know where they're picking it up. But Patsnap, again, the ability to extract the key insights, the key information, where the core patent is, and be able to take you straight to that. It means it's very easy to go and find those, whatever has been claimed, the key sequence, key drug of interest, and we can make those links and connections very, very quickly. So yeah, whilst companies can do that, they can go and search through like old patents as well. We can help you to pinpoint the key patents. When you come to one of those thickets, you could be like, right, I know exactly what these guys are talking about, what they're claiming, to help me develop my own portfolio.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I think that there are a lot of innovation that was happening in the wrong time. So we've seen it before, let's say with Microsoft, who invented a touch screen like 10 years before Apple, but there were no apps, there were no internet, so you couldn't use it. And then suddenly it just exploded, right? So there is so much potential to go and take a look at older patents that might have not developed because there was no um, technology to complement it, right? To combine it, and now this can be done, and things can be developed further. So that's highly interesting. And besides what we were talking about, that you mentioned that there should be, AI that would help draft and get and help connect the dots. So do you see any other advancement, if you look in the future, which you think is still not yet there, but I think it could happen? We might be working on this, or we might be working on this, or or at the moment it's just imagination. But if we could do that, that would change the landscape.
Well, there's so much, and it's really difficult to sort of try and wrap my head around how much we've developed in the last year. Even in the last like 6 months or so, we've released, like I say, that degenerate searching tool. We've got our chemical modification platform. We've got our own large language model, which you can ask questions and it can interpret and summarize data for you. So the speed of innovation, not only in the pharmaceutical industry, but in Patsnap as well, is unprecedented. I don't know where we're going to be in 6 months, 12 months time, but we have a huge team of developers who are very well versed in how to make these tools and how to get the most out of this data. And I can only see it improving. Like there's more and more data coming out there every day. We're coming up with more innovative ways of extracting this information and making it readable for the user. So yeah, there's all those things like pattern summarization, drafting, analysis, and tagging key drugs, targets, indications, pipelines, whatever you want. And even moving towards, like I said, using client data, using their own information, using our LLM. So there's limitless potential really for how you can use the data. So I'm really excited to see where it goes.
So do you see that this explosion of LLMs suddenly changed the industry and just opened completely new doors for you, which you couldn't have imagined, like I don't know, 3 years ago?
Pretty much, yeah. I would caveat it by saying, if you just throw out an LLM there, it's only as good as the data it's trained on.
Yeah.
If you look at something like ChatGPT, for instance, it's an excellent model for asking it questions, understanding the entire internet, and getting a response from it. But with that comes problems. If you start asking it more complex questions, you start asking it more in-depth questions about specific innovation, a specific therapeutic, it will draw sources from multiple channels, and that's where you get things called hallucinations, which can often be contradictory. They can mean that you have to say, oh, well, hang on a minute, I've got two competing opinions here, I need to go and double check them. And then that whole thing I said about time, you have to go back again and double check, you have to validate which one is correct, find the original sources. It can prolong the whole exercise. But with Patsnap, so we've trained that LLM specifically on our own data. So we know it's the most comprehensive patent database on the market. We've brought in the most comprehensive sequence and structured drug information database in the market. By combining all this key data together, we're able to make very confident confident assessment of what, however you're trying to extract information from the LLM. So yes, it's important, and I think the LLMs are very good, but you need to make sure that the data that they're based on is accurate before you're trusting them. So for the purposes of what Patsnap is doing, helping in the pharmaceutical industry, development, discovery areas, that's an excellent data set to go off. So yeah.
Great insights into that. So I agree with you completely on this. So the data should be there, and the LLMs are as good as the data that they work with, right? So, wow, it's really fascinating topic, Ben. So, do you have any key takeaways before we finalize the talk, which you think we didn't touch, but I think you think it's very important to share?
Sure. I think what we're seeing nowadays, moving into 2024 and the advent of AI, all the LLMs that we're mentioning, it's very obvious across the field. There is a decline in the return on investment that we're seeing in drugs across the world. We're spending more and more each year. I think it was $250 billion or something in pharmaceutical R&D each year, and we're seeing diminishing returns on these year over year. It's a hard time to be developing, and you can see that from things like the large companies are making large layoffs. It's not affecting just the small businesses, it's large companies. We're seeing a real paradigm shift in how we're developing new technologies and innovations. And this is why we need to start using AI to become more effective at uncovering these technologies. So companies like Patsnap moving forwards to understand these key data points, being able to make those efficiencies. You can identify key information from the patents. You can make much more confident decisions about the strategies that you're making. Instead of taking 10 candidates forwards and spending a load of money, you can really focus on that one candidate that is going to make it to the market. Or, as we're seeing more and more now, using in silico models to make thousands of candidates and selecting the key ones that you want to take through your development and into the clinic. This is where the development is now starting to happen. So we're seeing companies being left behind right now. Those who aren't using AI, those who aren't using tools like Patsnap to embrace innovation, we're seeing them fall behind and they'll be on the decline. The ones that are starting to use AI to their advantage, they're the ones that we're seeing to develop these new therapeutics, these new innovations. And it's not just the pharmaceutical industry, it's across the whole innovation landscape. But obviously I'm biased and I love the pharma industry far more. But yeah, that would be my key takeaway, is those companies who are starting to use these innovative tools and to be more effective are the ones that we're seeing succeeding. So yeah, if you're interested in looking at how Patsnap can help that, drop us a note, come and see how it works.
Great, Ben. Thank you very much for those final words. So we will have the contact information for Ben Patsnap in the episode description. So feel free to reach out to Ben. And Ben, thank you very much for this great talk. It's a very fascinating field, and I wish you the best of luck.
Jan, thanks. It's been a real pleasure. I'd just say check out our website. We've got a great AI page there, or feel free to contact me directly. I'd be very happy to show you about what we could do.
That's great. Would you like to share the website address of the URL of Patsnap, just to if it has some ending which is unusual? So
just go search patsnap.com, yeah, or touch base with me. It's just Coverdale at patsnap.com, and yeah, we'll show you around, see, and come and see what we can do.
Cool. Sounds very fascinating. I would take up on this offer myself as well. Cool. So thank you, Ben. See you later.
Thank you, Jan.
Thanks for listening to the Qualitalks podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star review. If you want to learn more about GMP, please visit us at www.qualistery.com. Stay compliant and see you at the next one.